What is up, everybody? Welcome to AK Plays. I'm AK. Let's play. Alright, so today's video is going to be a little bit longer just because I want to really cover everything in this one. So this video I'm going to be going over some tips and tricks for using my SMG Striker build. The one I'm referencing is the build I put out a little while ago, and it was called the Ultimate SMG Striker, and I stand by it. It's a great build. It's not the hardest hitting build in the game, and it's not the best surviving build in the game. However, I think it's the most balanced build in the game, and that's what makes it really, really strong. And if you get good with it, you can be an absolute beast in the DZ. And of course, if you get good with this build, I feel like you're going to be good with basically any build other than skill builds and Deadeyes. Those you'll have to actually work on their own. But if you're good with this build, you're going to be good with any standard SMG or AR DPS build. So first things first. First thing I'm going to cover is the most important part about Striker is your stacks. Obviously, everyone kind of knows that, but with this 9K stam, 4K firearms, it's unbelievably important. Without the stacks, you're one of the weakest builds out there, just because other builds that have that kind of setup have huge buffs. But if you're at 0 stacks and you're disrupted, you're very, very, very weak. However, if you're intelligent and you get your stacks up right away, you are the strongest build in all of the game. So let's talk about how to get your stacks. First thing is accuracy. That's my first tip. Now, all of you are probably thinking as soon as I say accuracy, yeah, of course. How do we get accuracy? Well, obviously, I'm not the most accurate person in the game, but I feel like I'm pretty darn accurate. And that's what makes me effective, I would say. So first things first with accuracy is don't shoot someone who's strafing laterally. If someone's strafing left to right on you, they're obviously not prepared to face tank. They're waiting for a heal. They're waiting for a buff, a teammate, something. And if they're not ready, fine. Let them not be ready. We're going to use that to our advantage. Don't shoot a strafing target. You can shoot someone who's running away in a straight line because you probably won't miss. But if you're shooting someone who's running laterally, you have one of two things that could happen. If you're really, really accurate, you can maintain your stacks. If you're inaccurate, or inaccurate, I think is the right word. Yeah. But if you're inaccurate, then you're going to go down to 0 stacks and you're going to become a terrible build and you're going to die. So we don't shoot someone who's strafing laterally, we shoot them when they're ready to face tank. We let them get comfortable and they face tank. When they face tank, this build is the best face tanker in the game in my opinion. There's other builds that'll do more DPS, there's other ones that'll survive better, but this one, once you get a face tank, and if you have to break away because they're doing too much damage and you hit a med kit or you let your striker stacks heal you up, you're going to come back stronger than they are. And when you come back, you'll be at full health, you'll have, let's say, 60, 70 stacks, you'll be able to rip them down. So that's why if you have a face tank opportunity, take it. Unless, of course, there's 8 people, then don't face tank 8 people. Even with 100 stacks, that's going to be a challenge. So first thing, accuracy. You have to know when to face tank and when not to. If you're at 3 bars, you definitely want to face tank, especially if you're running a vicious house like I prescribe on this build. If you're running unforgiving, you don't need to care about the 3 bars as much. You just need to be when you're feeling comfortable and you feel like you can survive at 1 bar or 2 bars. But in my opinion, wait for 3 bars, use your vicious to your advantage, and shred somebody down. Your aim point is the next most important part of accuracy. You don't want to aim for the legs, you don't want to aim for the stomach, you want to aim for the upper chest. That would be like, I'd say, the bottom of the collarbone. You're going to land about 60% of your shots in the upper chest, about 40 are going to be landing up towards the head and maybe over the shoulders. But those shots that you're going to miss over the shoulders are going to be made up for by the headshot damage, because headshot damage is crazy. It's very underrated and a lot of people don't really talk about it. But if you land headshots, especially crits, because on this build you're at 60% crit chance, which, by the way, I did make that small change to the SMG Striker build, is I changed the EDR on my mask for crit chance to put me at maximum crit chance. However, if you're in a lobby with Pred, I often switch that back. So, though it's a very variable thing that's in my build. But back to the tips. So, if you're running that and you can get 100 stacks, if you can get accurate, if you're aiming in the right area, that's fine. So that's the first tip. I won't touch on accuracy anymore. You get it. So accuracy is number 1. Number 2, I would say, is knowing how to use your secondary weapon. So Striker involves you being very close to your target, because with an SMG, you have to be right on top of people. If you're at any kind of distance, shots are going to start missing over the people because your optimal range is bad, you're not going to do as much damage. So, because you don't want to shoot far away, you're going to be up close. When you get up close, you start running into huge problems. That would be people spamming nades, having to deal with more than one player at a time, having to deal with shock turrets and flame turrets. So, what we're going to do is switch to our secondary weapon to shoot NPCs. That is during PvP. So when you're fighting a player, you can turn and shoot an NPC. I don't think I do it at this point in the clip, but I do it later. When you do it, you don't want to have them shooting in your back, the players, not the NPCs. NPCs, you can leave one shooting in your back. You don't want to leave a bunch of them, but one won't kill you. So with the players, oh, I did just kill an NPC there. Okay, perfect. So what I do in that one is I procced Predatory, Sustained, On the Move, and Determined, all in one kill. So what you have to do is you switch, kill an NPC, and then go back to fighting the players. And all you did is give yourself a healing over time, a small healing boost from Sustained, On the Move is giving you damage resistance, and Determined is getting that ult back very quickly. So basically you come in after using your secondary, and you are, I'm going to say it, pretty much invincible. You're not. I mean, don't face tank 12 people, but if you do that, and you come in with a good amount of stacks after getting those procs, you're going to be a very hard to kill target, and you're going to hit pretty hard from the stacks you got from killing the NPC. So that's the second tip. First one, accuracy. Second one, killing NPCs with your secondary weapon. Make sure that secondary is the correct secondary. I don't know. You get what I mean there. Don't use a random weapon. It has to have Sustained, Predatory, and Determined. Some people run that as their secondary, which is like a sawed-off or a pistol. I prefer having it on my lightweight because I like to have that option to be able to beam NPCs from distance. That lightweight isn't going to do much to players. At 100 stacks you can kill people with it, but it's not going to be the fastest way to kill them. Alright, so those are the first two. The next tip would be to understand your enemy. If you're running into another striker, you're usually going to win if it's an even fight, because in my opinion, this is the best way to run Striker. No offense to you 7K firearm strikers. But if you see that they have Striker stacks, then always assume they're at 100, unless you can see that they clearly killed one NPC or something like that. Assume they're at 100 and don't go up and face tank them. To deal with another Striker player, run up in their face and give them your best strafe. Because unless they have watch the video that you're currently watching, or they are a good Striker player, they're going to try to follow you and shoot you while you're strafing, which will lose them all their stacks, and then you can have a free fight against them. And in an even fight, as I said before, this is the better Striker. So that's how you deal with a Striker. Second thing you could run into is a Pred. If you're dealing with a Pred, it's 1.8.2, put down that box. Okay, sorry, I really didn't like Preds in the last update. So that's how you deal with Pred. Next option is Nomad. Nomad, you have to be very careful. Yes, they got a small nerf, but they still exist. When you run into a Nomad, you're going to get a bunch of stacks and you're going to feel awesome. However, you can't anticipate how many lives they'll have if they're solo. So if you have a bunch of stacks and they proc, it doesn't matter. They're going to have a whole nother health bar, which might outdo your stacks if they're running their Nomad correctly. So you have to watch out for that burst damage that's going to come from the Nomad when they have another life. Basically, the only way to mitigate that is don't face tank when you get into those lower bars. If you're at 3 bars, definitely. 2 bars, don't start it, but if you have already done a face tank and it gets you down to 2 bars or 1 bar, if you're in your last bar, do not continue to face tank. Break away, hit a med kit. And I would say that those are your main threats. Obviously, Banshee is going to hit extremely hard. You just have to outplay them. Basically, that's running away and hitting and throwing a nade and getting them off balance, or that's getting a good funnel or something. But careful when you face tank Banshees; they do hit very hard. But then my last point, I would say getting your stacks at the beginning, accuracy is number 1. But if you have to get somebody off balance with a grenade, or if you have to throw a shock nade at them, or if you have to wait for somebody to be down on the ground and then finish them by shooting, then that's fine. Or if you have to get an NPC. Just be careful when you first initially get your stacks, and you have to do some kind of cheap way of doing that, then that's fine. Against good players, they're probably not going to give you a easy face tank at the beginning anyway, so you have to find a creative way to get those stacks. Don't run a shock turret. I won't be happy with you. Sorry, I hate those two. But if you do find one of those ways to get your stacks, great. Also, last final thing, and then I will let you go on your way to become a beastly striker. Don't punch people on the ground. Don't use your melee. Make sure you shoot them. And if you have time, use your lightweight so you can proc all those things, and make sure you shoot them while moving so you can get on the move. If you don't have time to use your lightweight, fine, burn them with your house. But make sure that you're moving and make sure that you shoot them, don't punch them. That's it. Those are a good amount of the things. There's a couple smaller things that might be a little more complex, but basically that is how you become a beast with Striker. So those are my tips and tricks. I hope you enjoyed the video.